My research for children's needs took me back to my own upbringing. Now, my parents were divorced. My mother was gone, my father given to drink, but I had a lot of what a child needs. I lived with my father and my grandparents in a semi-rural area where we grew just about everything that we ate. We had chickens and rabbits, and we ate those too. I had a large extended family of aunts and uncles that I saw frequently and who acted as positive role models. Now, in my small town, where everybody knew everybody else, if I made a misstep, my grandparents would know about it before I arrived home. Everybody watched everybody else's children, and nobody moved from our neighborhood. Nobody ever moved from that neighborhood ever the whole time I grew up. It was truly a community, and everybody was tied to all the others and somehow responsible to them. Now, let me illustrate what I mean when I say everybody was tied to everybody else. I remember the day our coach left town for good. Our whole senior class remembers that day. He came into our English class to tell the teacher goodbye. His right eye was swollen and purple. It appears that the coach, a man with movie star good looks, was having an affair with the tall, statuesque wife of Doodley Peterson, son of bootlegger Pee Wee Peterson, from whom my father got his bootleg whiskey at the filling station, catty corner from the Baptist church where I went to services twice on Sunday, and then again on Wednesday. You see what I mean? The fabric was woven very tight. Anyway, Doodley had beaten up our coach and had told him to get out of town that day or he would kill him. And knowing Doodley, I expect that he would have. Now, all of us in that class looked at one another. We looked around. We knew it had to be something like that. We sighed. Now, for the rest of the year, we would have to make do with the assistant coach. And everybody agreed that he was not the brightest bulb on the marquee of life. Well, whatever. Now, I'm not saying that everything was picture perfect in that little town in North Louisiana, but I am saying that children need a sense of belonging, a sense of place, a deep knowing that they are children and that the adults are adults. For a child to feel safe, they have to have grown-ups for parents. They have to know that the parent has values that they admire and can emulate. They have to know that boundaries will be set, else they cannot feel safe. And they have to know deep in their bones that their parents find life joyful and good, full of hope, not tragic and mean. Now, for children who don't have such parents, maybe they have another figure. Maybe they have an aunt, a grandfather, a teacher, a neighbor who models joy and hope for them. Now, who was your model when you grew up? Who was your model? Who taught you what it meant to be a grown-up? You didn't survive and flourish by accident. And perhaps you can be that model for a child who doesn't have one. Perhaps you can make all that difference because you can. You know, I am well aware that one of the main things that I do as a female minister is just to show up in this pulpit so that little girls can see me here. I had no such model, and I was well into my 40s before I learned that I could dare walk into a pulpit and preach. I hadn't seen a woman in a pulpit. And now when little girls come through that line after church and they want to meet me, and one of them sometimes will come up and they'll kind of stroke the velvet of my robe and look up, you know, like this. And I just smile, and I know that that alone is reason enough for my being here. And I think to myself, little girl, you can do whatever you want to do. Now I want to talk for a moment about families living in poverty. And you know, 1 out of every 5 children lives in such a family. That's huge. 1 in every 5 children living in poverty is really low, really, really low income. For such families, a joyful, satisfying life is a fantasy. It's a dream. The greatest disgrace in this nation is what we do to our working poor. They sometimes work at 2 or 3 jobs, often doing the work that nobody else wants to do, cleaning the toilets, lifting the heavy boxes in the warehouses, killing the chickens, washing the dishes at the restaurants where we eat. Economic inequity is at the root of so much of our national suffering and so much of the suffering of our children. You cannot separate the anguish of the children from the poverty and the suffering of their parents. So, how do children grow up feeling safe and secure? There are some basics. They need to have enough to eat, enough healthful food to eat. And you've got to know that many, many children arrive at school hungry each day. Thank goodness some of the schools have breakfast programs for children, or they would be hungry all day at school. Children need a structured home environment with parents who have the time and energy to nurture them. They need to be kept away from the excesses of popular culture. Popular culture is about selling things, and that's it. That's what it's about. I don't care about the children. Okay, the destructive video games, the constant noise and advertisements and violence of television, the electronic gadgets that are such a poor substitute for human warmth and guidance and companionship. And they need spiritual guidance, a church school, not just the middle-class pursuits of ballet and art lessons and soccer practice. They need also religious understandings and guidance. They need some time in the natural world. And they need to be loved for who they are intrinsically, not as products to show off, not as just another commodity to make their parents seem accomplished.